Good morning. Welcome to Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Press, and I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And I'm sure, like you, like myself, you're all anxious to continue our reading and discussion of this book, Footprints of the Jesuits by R.W. Thompson. We're currently in the introduction of the book, page 29, if you're following along in your own copy. We'll begin with the first full paragraph on the page, about a third of the way down. Backing up just a little bit for continuity, the author says the members of this society, speaking of the Jesuit order, and by the way, we're discussing how the Jesuit order and the Roman Catholic Church have brought down this country, have defeated it without a fight. And the way they did it was that they destroyed Protestantism. Now, I know that sounds outrageous, but if you'll continue to listen to this program, you'll see that this is true. Palpably true. Researchably true. And the Jesuits have, throughout their history, set about to destroy Protestantism and everything that grew out of or resulted from the Protestant Reformation, to restore the papacy to global supremacy in a global government, a global religion, a global economic system, all under the headship of the man I call the man of sin, the son of perdition, the one who exalts his throne above the stars of God and says he will be like the Most High. That's a man on the earth, indwelt by Satan, but that man is the papacy. Now, the author says the members of this society, speaking of the Jesuit order, the members of this society are numerous and powerful in the United States. Now, remember, the Jesuits were excoriated all over the world, kicked out of every country in the world that they ever set foot in, except the United States of America. You can consider the United States of America as the principal home base of Jesuitism. This is where they operate without resistance, without opposition, without protest. And they govern the world from the United States of America. That's why America is such a strong and controlling military power in the world. That is true because the Jesuits have literally co-opted our government. Now, it says the members of this society are numerous and powerful in the United States and are constantly increasing, mainly by accessions from their drilled and disciplined companions in Europe, but also by conversions of unsuspecting young men who are seduced by their vain and supercilious pretensions as educators. We talked about this yesterday. The most prestigious universities in the world are Jesuit universities, and those who seek to be successful in this day and age seek a Jesuit education. And you can just go through the list of the most powerful people in this country, the most influential people in this country, even the behind-the-scenes powers in this country, and you'll find a vast majority of them are Jesuit-trained, graduates from Jesuit universities, where they have been indoctrinated with Jesuitical teaching for the purpose of seeking power in the highest offices of the land, so that they will be servants of their Jesuit educators. And you'll find these Jesuit universities are principally involved in politics and warfare and economics and all the means by which they have brought this country to heel. Now, he says they are, as they have always been, speaking again of the Jesuits, they are, as they have always been, selfish and vindictive, restless under opposition, and compromising in nothing. Remember, the Jesuits are a military order. They're not an ecclesiastical order. Their principal occupation is of military characteristic. And it says that they have neither country, nor homes, nor families, nor friendships beyond the limits of their own order, the Jesuit order, none of the affections of the heart which give charm to life and social intercourse, being required to abandon all these to fit themselves for uninquiring obedience to their general, whose commands, whether right or wrong, good or bad, they have solemnly vowed to execute without the least regard for the consequences. So these men are trained and prepared for military service, sacrificial military service. They have no family. They have no homes. They have no earthly possessions. And they are trained to be, as it were, human automatons at the complete and uninquiring disposal of their Jesuit general. And to go into the world anywhere they are commanded and to do whatever they are commanded without even the consideration of consequences. They are uninquiring. They ask no questions. They just click their heels, salute smartly, turn about, and do whatever the Jesuit general says. Instantly and completely and perfectly. They have the Jesuit general's mind. Okay, they're fitted for one task, and that's to bring the entire world into subjection to the papacy. Now, that is done through the civil governments of the world. Remember, we're talking about the most ideal state of existence for the papacy is a union of church and state, where the Roman Catholic Church rules over every government in the world. And together, the church and the state rule the people of the world. And that's the way it was in the Old World Order, and that's the way they intend it to be in the New World Order. Now, continuing, he says, having persistently refused to become reconciled to the forms and methods of Christian civilization which prevail among our Protestant population. Remember, they're designed to destroy Protestantism. It says they employ all the resources they can command in endeavoring to arrest them, to stop the effects of Protestantism. Let me read it without interruption. It says, having persistently refused to become reconciled to the forms and methods of Christian civilization which prevail among our Protestant population, they employ all the resources they can command in endeavoring to arrest them. Okay, so this is a declaration of war against Protestantism. And every form of government that has arisen from the Protestant Reformation has Protestant teachings within it. Protestant tenets. Self-regulation. You see, in Roman Catholic canon law, the people are not to be governors. The people are to be governed. The Pope is the replacement of the Son of God on earth, according to Roman Catholic canon law, and only he has the right to govern. And of course, he needs much help. He can't do it single-handedly. So he must have complete and unfettered control of the civil government, union of church and state. Now it says they insist that the church and state shall be united wheresoever they are separate, and that the basis of such union shall be the subordination of the state to the church. The church shall rule the state, not vice versa. Now, we have laws in this country that make the state more powerful than the Roman Catholic Church. Okay? But those laws are going to be ignored if not rescinded. The Roman Catholic Church is going to be sacrosanct. And when the union of church and state is perfect, the government will also be sacrosanct, because it will be a soldier for the Pope. So you're going to find increasingly more and more and more criticism of the papacy and criticism of the government, whether it be local government, county government, state government, or federal government, are going to be verboten. I mean, we all remember what happened to those who criticized Hitler, right? He was the civil power under the control of the papacy. When Hitler and the Nazi regime came under the authority of the papacy, both the church and the state became sacrosanct. And anybody who spoke out against the government was regarded as a heretic. And we all know what happens to heretics in the Roman Catholic Church. The same thing happened in Nazi Germany. What we're seeing is exactly what happened during the Second World War when the Vatican and the Nazi regime got in bed together. Church and state became sacrosanct. The church gave the orders, the state implemented those orders with bloody ruthlessness. The same thing's going to happen in the United States of America. And never will anybody in the mainstream media ever discuss the fact that church and state are united. That's up for us to do. The little people. Those who they have targeted together. The people. The laity. This is the spirit of Nicolaitanism, the subjection of the people, the subjection of the laity. Okay, it's happening right here today in our country. He says self-government by the people is held by them, that is by the Jesuits, to be violative of the divine law, and on that account may rightfully be resisted as heretical when its overthrow can be assured. So we're seeing the overthrowing of this country, then we can take that to mean that the Jesuits regard that it is now assured that the overthrow of the people in this country is now possible. It's assured. Okay? So now the self-government, or in other words, a government of, by, and for the people, is being replaced with a hierarchical form of government. You see our government becoming more and more and more hierarchical, not responding to the needs, wishes, or desires or grievances of the people and imposing its will upon the people without their consent, and a will that is not even the domestic will. It is a will that is being exerted upon the civil government by a foreign power, by the papacy. He says they, the Jesuits, will allow no rights to exist in either states, peoples, or individuals against what they consider the prerogatives of their society as defined by their general, who in their estimation possesses the divine right to enlarge or contract them, in other words, to give and take rights at his own pleasure. Okay, there's where your rights are going to come from, ultimately. The Jesuit general. He's going to determine what your rights are. And, of course, he's not going to do it directly because that would expose him for the controller of the world that he is. And that's not going to happen. He's going to do that subtly through Roman Catholics in government. They're going to pass laws, impose ordinances, rules, regulations, and punishments that will achieve their end. The subjugation of the people. The taking away of your rights. Are you losing your rights? Did you know your rights came from the Protestant Reformation? That your right of self-government came from the Protestant Reformation? Well, the Protestant Reformation is being destroyed, and so is everything that rose out of the Protestant Reformation. Those rights are being destroyed. Those Protestant rights are being destroyed. And now your rights are given and taken by the Jesuit general through his operatives in our government. Now it says there must be no limitation to the power and independence of the Pope, either in the spiritual or the temporal domain. Okay? There are only two domains, the spiritual and the temporal. there aren't any other domains. We're talking about every aspect of human existence, spiritual and temporal. That says there must be no limitation to the power and independence of the Pope, either in the spiritual or the temporal domain, except where the interests of their society, that is the Jesuits, command otherwise. So here we have proof that the Jesuits determine what the Pope's domain is. Okay? He says they must be full, absolute, unquestioned, to the extent defined by himself. Okay? All the spiritual and temporal power are determined by him. He says his liberty must be such that he may, at his own discretion, curtail the liberties of all others. All others. No exceptions, right? We're talking on a global scale. That's what the New World Order is. It's global. No exceptions. He says his spiritual sovereignty must include whatsoever he shall embrace within it. In other words, the Pope determines his spiritual domain, his spiritual jurisdiction. And it is unlimited, according to Roman Catholic canon law. As the replacement of the Son of God on earth, he has complete, total, and unchallenged superiority and sovereignty over the spiritual realm. Isn't that like exalting your throne above the stars of God, and sitting upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north, ascending above the heights of the clouds, and being like the Most High? That's what it is. His spiritual sovereignty must include whatsoever he shall embrace within it. Neither the existence nor the extent of his sovereignty must be brought into question before any human tribunal. You see, he doesn't answer to humans. We're the laity, the God of gods, the Lord, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Obviously, doesn't have to answer to his subjects. You see where we're going with this? I mean, this is blasphemy in its dictionary definition. Neither the existence nor the extent of this sovereignty must be brought into question before any human tribunal, but he alone shall define it, together with the character of the obedience he shall exact. Now that's total despotism. I mean, if there was somebody in your neighborhood that was this arrogant, he wouldn't have a friend in the world, would he? But the whole world bows down to the Pope. What is it about the papacy that so deludes mankind? It says, and if in the course of the papal economy, that is, the papal existence, its operations within the world, if in the course of the papal economy he should ever find it necessary to hold in one hand emblems of harmony and peace, this restless and uncompromising society, the Jesuit order, stands always ready to place the rod of chastisement in the other. Okay? You ever hear the expression, the carrot and the stick? Well, if the Pope ever stands up and wants to hold up the carrot to the whole world, the Jesuits are there to make sure that he has a stick of chastisement in the other. In other words, the Jesuits are responsible to maintain the temporal or the kingly power of the papacy, to make sure that the Pope never forgets to pick up, along with the carrot, the stick. Okay, now how does the papacy exercise the stick of correction? Well, all of history attests to that. Excommunication, inquisition, burnings at the stake, economic sanction, even to the point of even refusing a deceased Christian a Christian burial. Just throw their bodies out in the ditch and let the dogs eat them up. Okay? This is brutal. It's brutal history. A history that most Americans are completely oblivious to today. He says, the conflict of opinions, therefore, in which the Protestant people of the United States find themselves engaged is not of their own inviting. You know something? It's not only not of our own inviting. Most people in the United States today, not necessarily at the time of the writing of this book, but as of today, people aren't even aware of the Jesuit order. Most of the people that I talk to on amateur radio about the Jesuit order can't even spell Jesuit. Many of them professing to be a researcher of the Jesuit order for 10 years can't even spell Jesuit. So there's a lot of phonies out there that think they know something about Jesuitism. They don't have a clue what they're talking about. Just parroting the words of other people. You know, there's nothing better than independent, personal research. People who endeavor to check things out for themselves. I mean, isn't that what the Protestant Reformation was based on? The Protestants were no longer satisfied with being spoon-fed the Scriptures from the priests. And they got a copy of the Bible for themselves in their own language, and they read it for themselves. They did their own biblical research, and they found out the church was lying to them. I suggest that that is exactly what's happening in America today. People are just going into the churches, checking their brains, their Bibles, and their coats at the door, walking in, sitting down, and believing and teaching whatever the priest says to preach and teach. And notice I didn't call him a pastor. A pastor shepherds his flock. A pastor loves his flock and tells them the truth and protects them at any cost. That's not the case today in the churches. Otherwise, this truth would be told from every pulpit in the United States today. You want one proof that our churches are bought and paid for? That they no longer serve Christ, but that they serve mammon? Simply look at the truth this author is telling us in this book and then ask yourself, why have I never heard any of this from the pulpit in my church? It's because you don't have a pastor, you have a priest. It says, the conflict of opinions, therefore, in which the Protestant people of the United States find themselves engaged is not of their own inviting. Excuse me. He says they, speaking of the Protestants of America, they were unwilling parties to it. It had its origin in the spirit of aggression which prevails among those who have stronger sympathy for an alien power than for the right of self-government. And on account of their peculiar fitness for the work, it will engage every Jesuit tongue and pen in the land. Okay? It came about because a growing segment of our society had more loyalty to a foreign power than a love for self-government. That describes the Roman Catholics in the highest offices in this land. They have more love for their foreign potentate than they do for self-government. That's why your liberties are disappearing. We'll be right back after this.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
In this day of economic uncertainty and soaring unemployment, safe investments are often hard to find. But investing in the precious metals is the safest investment of all, because gold and silver is real money. Government-printed currency is not. Call Melody Cedarstrom at Discount Gold and Silver Trading Company at 1-800-375-4188. Melody has been helping people secure their financial future for over 10 years. While others in the business claim honesty, Melody will deliver. Give her a call, 1-800-375-4188. That's 800-375-4188.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Okay, welcome back from the break. You're listening to the second half hour of Inquisition Update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. If you wish to contact me with questions or comments, suggestions, or just to say howdy, you may email me at tom@seawaves.us. That's tom@seawaves, that's SEAWAVES.us. And also check out the website inquisitionupdate.org, and please support First Amendment Radio. I do Inquisition Update for free. It's Nicholas who pays the bills. Please support First Amendment Radio. Now, returning where we left off before the break, he said, the conflict of opinions, therefore, in which the Protestant people of the United States find themselves engaged is not of their own inviting. They are unwilling parties to it. It had its origin in the spirit of aggression which prevails among those who have stronger sympathy for an alien power than for the right of self-government. And on account of their peculiar fitness for the work, it will engage every Jesuit tongue and pen in the land. You want to know where the confusion and conflict of opinions in the Protestant world come from? The Jesuits. Divide and conquer. That's what it's all about. Keep us all embroiled in doubtful disputations. Keep the Roman Catholic Church solid in its doctrine and teaching. No one may deviate from the official teaching of the Church. And thereby make it appear that Protestants are in the wrong, that they don't have unity, and then use that apparent disunity to claim ecumenism. You must come back to Mother Church. Stop this confusion and come back to Mother Church, where we all believe the same thing. All right? We're unwilling parties to this controversy. We're subjects of it. It's been brought upon us. Okay? And by who was this brought upon us? The Jesuits, who have a stronger sympathy for an alien power, that is the Pope, the universal God of this world. They have a sympathy for the Pope, then a greater sympathy for the Pope than for the right of self-government. And on account of their peculiar fitness for the work, it will engage every Jesuit tongue and pen in the land. Okay? This This is a war that has been brought upon us by the Jesuit order. There was peace and quiet in this country early on. Nothing that would challenge our republic. But now it has destroyed our republic. And because we simply weren't aware, we were not made aware of what the Jesuit order's business is in the world. It's also based on a lost knowledge that our form of government was a result of Protestantism. How many people over the years have I talked to when we speak of our republic, and many now acknowledge that it is a republic, not a democracy. Many people are beginning to comprehend that it is a republic. It's governed by a body of laws, but how many of those people realize that it came about as a result of the Protestant Reformation, that they owe their rights, their liberties, and their way of life to Protestantism? And I dare say I've not found one. Not in all my years of these discussions on amateur radio did I find one American that was knowledgeable that our form of government came as a result of the Protestant Reformation. And so they don't see the destruction of this country as a destruction of Protestantism. They simply won't accept that premise, but that is what it's all about. Remember, the Jesuits were created to destroy Protestantism and every form of government that resulted from the Protestant Reformation and throw the world back into a global union of church and state where the Pope ruled over all the governments of the world. You can't have a republic like the United States and also exist under another king. Okay? It doesn't work. The papacy won't accept it. So the Jesuits have set about to destroy our republic. They've set about to destroy Protestantism. They are true to their oath. Now it says, because of this, a sense of both duty and security demands that the history and character of this skilled and powerful adversary, the Jesuits, alien in birth, growth, and sentiment, should be understood, as also the causes which have led to the expulsion of the Jesuits from every country in Europe, the public odium which has rested upon them for many years, their long-continued disturbances of the peace of nations, and the final suppression and abolition of their society by one of the best and most enlightened of the popes. If there ever was a best and enlightened of the popes, the papacy did suppress this order. By popular demand, all of Europe was outraged at the Jesuits for doing the same things in Europe that they're doing in the United States today. You'd think the American people would begin to wake up. All of Europe can attest to what the Jesuits are, what they did to their governments to overthrow the Protestant Reformation. Why are Americans so ignorant? It's because you've never been told. And thanks to R.W. Thompson, he says, in view of the obligation to preserve our civil institutions, let me just add the word Protestant, civil institutions as they are, not only for ourselves and our children, but for the multitudes who shall seek shelter under them, we have no right to become either indifferent or inactive in the presence of such assailants who complacently fling defiance in our faces and seek to impregnate the free and pure atmosphere of our schools and seminaries of learning with the poison of monarchism. You hear all this talk about globalism? Just replace globalism with monarchism. And then you'll understand what globalism is. Globalism, the very word demands that there be a global king. Okay? Globalism means monarchism. And all of our church, all of our seminaries, and all of our schools teach globalism, monarchism, a new world order. Quote, listen to what George Washington had to say. Quote, against the insidious wiles of foreign influence, said Washington, the jealousy of a free people ought ever to be constantly awake, since history and experience prove that foreign influence is one of the most baneful foes of Republican government. This is a Republican government. Washington warned us that foreign influence is one of the most baneful foes of our republic. Now, whether or not Washington was speaking about the papacy, we can now know that it is the papacy that is the most baneful foe of our Republican government. Things my Protestant pastor didn't tell me. Right? Things my ecumenical evangeli-belly pastor just forgot to tell me. There's your evidence right there that the seminaries are completely controlled. All of this information is lacking. You don't dare talk about these things, because if you do, you'll be regarded as an anti-Roman Catholic bigot or any other epithet that they can throw in your face. They'll even call you a domestic terrorist, trying to incite a religious war in this country. I got news for you. There was a war that began in heaven before the world was. Satan was cast out. And that war continues, and it will continue until Christ comes and puts an end, a permanent end to it. There is a war raging, a spiritual war that shows itself, that manifests itself in the world as what we're experiencing in the United States today. It's all a result of a spiritual warfare. And it's time for God's people to realize that there's a war to fight. We have an enemy, and he manifests himself in our world. And we need to call it what it is and condemn it and demand a return to biblical Christianity, Protestantism in this country. No more universalism. No more Catholicism. No more ecumenism. We need Jesus Christ and the authorized King James Version of the Bible. We need to wipe out every tenet of Roman Catholic canon law from our civil government. We need to fire every Roman Catholic in our government, every Roman Catholic in the military, every Roman Catholic in the local police force, even right down to the airport commission in your town. And if we're not willing to take those steps, this country is toast, just like all the other countries in Europe were. We're following in the example that they followed. They allowed the Jesuits to come into their country to incite discord, to foment wars and revolutions, whereby they managed even greater and greater and greater control for the papacy and lesser and lesser and lesser rights for the people. And nowhere in the world is that more demonstrative in our day than in once Protestant America. They are so successful in controlling our country that they even control our military and have turned it into an inquisitor in the world, a crusading force for the papacy all over the world. It's time for God's people to wake up. It's high time for God's people to wake up. R.W. Thompson continues. This is chapter 2 of the book. It's entitled Ignatius Loyola, the Founder of the Order. This is going to give you the very character of the Jesuit order by describing its founder, The Jesuit order reveres Ignatius Loyola as a god. Even somewhere in Rome, in one of the buildings at the Vatican, there is a mural, a painting by a prominent artist called the Apotheosis of Loyola. It's where Loyola is backlit by the sun and he's surrounded by all the heavenly hosts. They've elevated Ignatius Loyola to a god in the world. That's how he is viewed by every Jesuit in the company of Jesus in the Jesuit order. He is revered and worshipped as a god. And here's some history that R.W. Thompson gives us about this man, Ignatius Loyola. He said, "It is of little consequence to the general reader what place in history is assigned to Ignatius Loyola, apart from the fact that he was the founder and originator of the Society of Jesuits, and lived long enough to stamp upon it the impress of his own personality. He availed himself of that organization to maintain among its members the vain and impious assumption of his equality with God, and in that way obtained such complete mastery over them, that is, every individual Jesuit, that in explanation and justification of their slavish obedience, they represent, they represent him as having possessed miraculous powers." Okay, when the Roman Catholic Church wants to canonize somebody or elevate someone to a position of sainthood, they have to ascribe to him miraculous power. Well, no one has been attributed to more miraculous power than Ignatius Loyola. He says they assign to him the performance of more miracles than Christ, and do not hesitate to record that that he not only restored the dead to life, but in one conspicuous case gave life to a child born dead. The silly stories of this character, told of him in apparent seriousness, can have no other effect than to impose upon and encourage ignorant and superstitious people, and are undoubtedly repeated by his Jesuit biographers for this purpose. They seem never to have realized that the world has grown wiser, and that the period has passed when fictions and myths can be proclaimed as realities. The life of Ignatius Loyola was written soon after his death by Rabad, one of his Jesuit followers who had known him intimately. Of course, under such circumstances, his statement of personal characteristics was presumably reliable. What he stated in the first edition was professedly based upon his own knowledge and what he had learned from Loyola's intimate friends and inseparable companions. And with these facts before him and fully considered, he declared that his, quote, sanctity was not justified by miracles, unquote. So this very contemporary historian, Rabad, wrote the history of Ignatius Loyola, and in his original work, which is considered to be trustworthy, made the statement his sanctity was not justified by miracles. Now, it says some years later, however, it was deemed expedient that this concession should be withdrawn entirely, and another more favorable to the Jesuits be substituted for it. Accordingly, in another edition of the same work, it is stated that Loyola's performance of miracles was, quote, confirmed by the most authentic proofs and careful examinations, unquote. All right, these statements are in direct conflict and cannot both be true. The first bears the impress of veracity because it is consistent with human experience, while the latter shows the tracings of Jesuit fingers too clearly to mislead any thoughtful and intelligent mind. It is singularly strange that in the present reading and enlightened age, These pretended miracles are cited by Jesuits to prove that divine power and authority were conferred upon Ignatius Loyola because God chose him to accomplish special objects in his name, when the very things which, as they allege, he was providentially appointed to defeat, that is, the Protestant Reformation, have transpired in spite of him, his successors, and all their followers. Okay? If he was appointed by God a special work to destroy Protestantism, to destroy all that came out of the Protestant Reformation, to either bring Protestants back into the Roman Catholic Church or destroy them off the face of the earth, wouldn't you think that Ignatius Loyola would be more successful in that endeavor if God had given him that directive? But Protestantism remains 490 some odd years later. I'm still going strong. They haven't won the battle yet. Is God really on their side? Is God really the one who inspired Ignatius Loyola to form the Jesuit order to destroy Protestantism, the King James Bible, and the truth on the earth, and to raise the papacy to global supremacy? Why has it taken him so long if God sanctioned him to do that dastardly work? The suppression of the Reformation and the extirpation of Protestantism, its legitimate fruit, were the avowed purposes of himself and his society, because according to them the curse of God rested upon these as the excess of unpardonable heresy. According to them, the Protestant Reformation was a result of the excesses of unpardonable heresy. Are you beginning to see why the Jesuits are dedicated to destroying Protestantism by any and every means at their disposal? It says, for the accomplishment of these objects, he converted the members of his society into a compact body of militia and placed in their hands weapons chosen by himself, instructing them that they were specially selected as the executioners of the divine vengeance. The divine vengeance. Every Jesuit is raised up to believe that he is to be an instrument of divine vengeance on the world. And that vengeance is directed at Protestantism. It says, yet the Reformation progressed until it marked out new paths of advancement for the nations. And Protestantism has extended its beneficent influences until it is today, and I'll remind my listeners, at the time of the writing of this book, certainly not in our day, it says, yet the Reformation progressed until it marked out new paths of advancement for the nations, and Protestantism has extended its beneficent influences until it is today the controlling power in human affairs, and has even taken possession of places where the papacy once ruled with sovereign and unchallenged authority. Okay? Remember, this book was written in the late 1800s. R.W. Thompson could not say this today. We've completely forgotten what the papacy is and what the Jesuit order is. We've forgotten what Protestantism is. And that's how they've destroyed us. He said, the great work thus begun in the face of Jesuit maledictions and curses has not yet ended. For Protestantism still continues to build up nations, elevate and improve peoples, and make mankind freer, happier, and more prosperous, while there has not been a time since the Jesuit existed as a society when they have not been odious in all parts of the world, and have not been regarded as the plotters of mischief and disturbers of the public peace. How can a thoughtful mind account for these results by any known process of human reasoning if it were true that Loyola had divine power conferred upon him expressly for the purpose of exterminating Protestantism as a heresy. And how, if this society of the Jesuits has been providentially endowed with faculties to consummate his ends, could it have happened that one of the wisest and best of the popes, for whom infallibility is now claimed, was constrained or forced to condemn the Jesuits by positive suppression, and to declare under the solemn responsibilities of his sacred office, the papacy, that it was not worthy of longer existence? How is it, if God was the one who inspired Ignatius Loyola, how is it that the whole world execrates him and his order, the Jesuit order? How is it that a pope even suppressed the order? I'll tell you why. God did not institute the Jesuits. Satan did. God did not ordain the papacy. Satan did. Now has it become more clear? He says, but leaving these questions unanswered for the present, it is sufficient to say here that no qualities possessed by Loyola, whatever they were, can oblige the present age to recognize his society as entitled to any such prerogatives and immunities as exempt it from having its real worth tested by the rules universally accepted as applicable to human conduct and affairs. It's time for us to quit viewing the Jesuits as having been ordained by God and put them to the test that every human institution is put to. And you'll find, as this author has found, it is a complete and miserable failure to serve God. It serves Satan himself. We've come to the close of the program. Thanks for listening today. Tomorrow, I hope I get this frog out of my throat. We'll continue to learn more about the history of Ignatius Loyola. See you tomorrow.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.